In audio, French products have always been considered something special, so today we review a French product. This is the Elipson Heritage XLS 7 speaker. It is a speaker, they don't really call it a bookshelf speaker, they just call it a mini speaker because it has two bigger brothers, the XLS 11 and the XLS 15. So this is the smallest of the series, which is still pretty big. At the front, we have one 165mm paper cone driver. We also have one silk 22mm soft dome tweeter, and we have this little button here which you can use to adjust the treble. So it can go from -2 decibels to reference to +2 decibels. This is a pretty bright and open sounding pair of speakers, so I'd recommend sticking with -2 decibels for most people, unless your room really doesn't have enough treble. For example, if you are in a properly treated room, you may notice that you want a bit of extra treble. I even have the front bass ports plugged because that tightens up the sound and it gives them a bit of extra boom, and because that gives them a faster speed. You can see this is a sponge that comes in the default package, which you use to then plug the bass port at the front. I actually should leave that open because if it is open, it should create a more open sound. I just thought that I would lose this piece of sponge if I opened it up. This is a pretty heavy speaker. It is about 10 kilograms, 9.2. You can see it has this beautiful design. It also comes with a vintage looking protection. This is that protection. This is a grill that you place on the speaker. I got that question a few times, but adding this will actually lower the sound quality a bit. Is it worth adding it? Most of the times, no. If you don't have kids, if you don't have animals, then no, it is not. Are there many people without kids and animals? Also no. So for most people, this is a must. What you do is you put them on the front of the speaker. It is magnetic and it should stick to the speaker automatically. And this is how the Heritage XLS 7 looks like with the protection. Pretty beautiful. At the back we have just one speaker connection. It's not made for B wiring. It has a very standard connection at the back, but it's very well assembled. So there are no loose edges, no breakpoints, everything is just super nicely assembled, super high quality. I really enjoy the quality of the XLS 7. At the back we have the actual technical data. It is a two-way speaker with bass reflex. It has an RMS power of 90 watts, an 88 decibels sensitivity or SPL, and a 6 ohms of impedance. What that means for you is that you should be able to drive them relatively well with a decent amplifier. They will not work very well with a very weak amplifier because then you won't have enough power. As there is no bass port at the back, this is the one speaker that can be glued to the wall. For example, I haven't noticed much of a difference if I place them really close to the wall compared to placing them really far from the wall. For example, if I use that rule where you have to leave half a meter to a meter between the speaker and the wall. And everything just is so easy to use with the XLS 7. There is still one in the back. They come in pair and they are priced at 899 euros, at 799 euros or 899 US dollars. So in US dollars it's about 900, in euros it's about 800. As they are made in Europe, you shouldn't have any extra taxes if you purchase them in Europe. Elipson is trying to undercut every single other producer in the Western world, so what they're trying to do is create better products at lower prices, which actually works out very well. This is a very airy sounding pair of speakers. They have a huge soundstage, it just extends like whoa. They have a snappy and lightweight sound, so there is not a lot of bass. Also, the bass rolls off at about 50 Hz. Below 50 Hz, there is a sharp roll off and there isn't much bass. Above 60 Hz, it is quite neutral also, so there is not a lot of bass in the sound. The bass isn't very warm, it is actually a pretty bright, open and acoustically cohesive sound. We get a very natural kind of presentation, so what I like the most about them is how easy and how crystalline everything sounds like. They just have this presentation that works very well with female voices, with pianos, with violins. Everything just has a lot of emotion, everything is immersive, engaging, but at the same time it is never fatiguing. So despite being quite bright, it is the one pair of speakers that I would consider to be zero fatigue, which is nice. Most speakers tend to be a bit fatiguing, especially when they have such an open sound. Usually when you call a speaker bright, people run away from it, but with the Elipson Heritage XLS 7, you don't have to run away. It's quite enjoyable. The secret to that is having a somewhat wet texture. So a wet texture is the opposite of dry. They never sound dry, they just sound musical, fluid. Music is never forced onto you. It is always cohesive and always organic. Everything just sounds as it would sound in nature, especially the upper, mid-range and the treble. It just sounds so sweet. So that Twitter is doing an excellent job, and the Papercone driver just doesn't give music much oomph or much punch, but at the same time it gives it the natural amount of body that it should have in nature. I would consider the XLS7 to be a perfect speaker if you listen to a lot of acoustic music or music that is generally recorded and which came from acoustic instruments. It can reproduce acoustic instruments very well, but it just doesn't sound that engaging or that colorful with synthetic instruments, for example, with synths, with guitars that have been distorted by amplifiers, so including metal. It just sounds a bit too honest. It also has a huge dynamic range, which is desirable for audiophiles. So what they do, they don't compress the dynamic range. Allowing the full width of the dynamic range means that this speaker will allow your music to just sound open. Everything will sound open. There will be a huge difference between what is loud and what is quiet, which creates a very natural, lifelike sound, and at the same time requires you to push the volume, and when something is loud, you will hear that it is loud. It's almost like they want to become alive in your room, and they don't want to sound like a pair of speakers. They want to sound like music sounds like. Quite interesting. So at the end of the day, at this price point, you can't really grab anything that comes even close to the XLS7. Most speakers that cost about $1,000 will sound much less resolute. So XLS7 has the resolution going for it, but also the cohesiveness. You can't really hear where the crossover threshold is, even though they quote that it is about at 2400 Hz. You just don't hear it. The drivers just combine so nicely together. They also sound super natural, so I like that quite a lot. In general, the XLS7 is fully recommended to you if you listen to a lot of classical, a lot of acoustic music, and music which was recorded based on actual instruments. Even symphonic rock, symphonic metal would work very well. Pop and commercial music will sound quite open and quite bright, so if you like that kind of signature, it's perfect. At the same time, if you want a bit more oomph, a bit more bass, you should purchase a subwoofer. You will require a subwoofer if you want to have a bit of extra boom boom. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed the video. Don't forget, the XLS7 is one of the best deals you can grab. Also, one of the best things you can do is subscribing to my channel, liking this video. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see each other really soon. Bye!